Welcome to eThekwini Matters. My name is Zimbili Mazibuko, your host. Millions of people use public transport every day to get to work. The city's Go Durban project, regarded to be the answer to a more efficient transport system, has been on the cards for many years. While the infrastructure has been built, there have been some challenges in getting it off the ground. The eThekwini Transport Authority has been locked in negotiations with minibus taxi and bus operators and decided to turn around the strategy to formulate a new way of operating that would lead to an improved public transport system in the city. With us in studio is Thami Manyathi, head of eThekwini Transport Authority. Mr. Manyathi, sikubingelele sikwamukele namhlanje on eThekwini Matters.
Thank you very much, Zimbili. Thanks for having me.
Can you please give us some background on how we got to this project?
The Go Durban project is part of a national effort to improve public transport in cities. It is contained in the National Public Transport Strategy as well as in the National Land Transport Act. As cities, we are expected to do all we can to improve public transport, not only to make it easy for people to go about their business, be it going to work, shopping or other needs that they may have, but it's also about cities using public transport to spatially transform. As you may appreciate, the history that we have as a country and cities was around segregated development, which then created a particular spatial form. Now, to knit communities together and integrate communities, public transport is expected to play a significant role. That is then, part of the motivation behind programs like Go Durban, in various cities.
Can you explain what the tactical adjustment framework is?
In our case as a city, many will know that we've been involved in attempts to get the program to a point where new services actually start running. Infrastructure is on one of our key corridors, the C3 corridor between Bridge City in Guamashu and Pinetown. Has been largely completed for a number of years, but we could never get to a point where we could reach agreement with the operators on how the existing operators, that is, on how they would be incorporated in the new system. And as a result of that, we could never get the new services going. What we then did after the last incident where, as a city and operators, we deadlocked and we couldn't find agreement, we then took a step back and did some consultation behind the scenes, informally, to see, what were the key areas of concern, for the operators, as well as, to go back to the city leadership to understand, where the key emphasis still remained. And it is out of those discussions that we then made proposals to council on how the approach to implementing these new systems, on how, Naskana, in our case, it could be amended in several ways so that, we could accommodate some of the valid concerns that the operators were putting on the table and allow the program to proceed. That is essentially what the tactical adjustment is all about. The ultimate objective of improving public transport, improving infrastructure on 9 key corridors here in the city, which will be supported by feeder services. That remains the ultimate objective, but how we get there is what the tactical adjustment outlines.
So how does this approach affect the services?
The approach itself is not going to affect the services. What it will do, it allows us to utilize some of the levers that we already have as a city to get the program going. In a sense, we already have 13 existing public transport contracts in the city. That is what we have proposed that we're going to look to make use of to get started and incorporate affected or operators in the catchment area of each of the contracts, which is in line with what is envisaged in the legislation. The massive benefits that come from just that one aspect of using the 13 contracts is that as opposed to focusing on the one corridor, which was a C3 corridor, we are now going to be introducing improvements to public transport across the city, because these 13 contracts span, the breadth and the width of the city. So even if you're in Hammersdale, needing to travel to Pinetown, to the CBD, you will start seeing some of the improvements, Mbumbulu, Lazi, and so on and so forth. Whereas, had we continued with the approach that we've been using up to this point, it would have taken generations in some instances for some of the communities to see the changes. So we're going to make do with existing infrastructure, with some minor upgrades, whilst we continue with the development of the major infrastructure in accordance with the network of 9 corridors. But the changes would have begun even before we get to areas with major infrastructure upgrades.
So when can we expect the services to commence?
Some of the services will commence now in June. We look with the priority feeder contracts expected to run as early as June, and going into July, we will start seeing some of the major the long haul contracts from the Hammersdales, from the Mumbulus and so forth. We'll start seeing that.
If you can explain just in simple terms what this means for people who use the public transport, buses and these taxis on a daily basis.
The most significant aspect is that as a user of public transport, you'll be able to use any of the services that are contracted in the city, because we're going to be utilizing a common fare management system. So unlike at the moment where people from the south that use South Coast bus services, for instance, all that they can use is that, especially those that utilize coupons, in the case of that service. But now, whether it is what was operated by South Coast or what is operated by Devon Transport, Transnet, or any of the other services, with one smart card, you'll be able to use all of those services and not have to wait a long time until the particular bus comes along. We see that as improving the convenience to users of public transport. We see that also as introducing safety, because we'll be using smart card technology instead of people needing to carry cash with them. And just the overall efficiency of moving around the city will be improved as a result.
Would you like to add anything else?
I think, for us, what has been significant in identifying the amendments that needed to be made, and also in formulating a solution that would be acceptable to stakeholders across the board, has been the importance of actually listening to one another. I think oftentimes, especially from government, we design solutions And then we expect that the stakeholders should accept those, even where there may be deficiencies or shortcomings in the solutions that we're bringing forward. What has been quite significant in the journey that we've traveled is that there has been a lot of pressure on us to get to a point where the new services actually run. We could have been tempted just to look to throw money at the problem just to get the services running. For me, it is really heartwarming that the stakeholders that we've engaged with have been steadfast in their own way and have also been clear about where it is that they felt there were deficiencies and subsequently got involved in us crafting and formulating the new way for moving forward. Such that when we before we tabled the final proposal to council for approval, we went out for an open public consultation with stakeholders and members of the community generally. 78% of the respondents that addressed the changes directly supported the changes. So and that was testimony to the fact that people felt like they'd been consulted, they'd been engaged with, and they'd been heard. And some of the proposals and suggestions that they'd put forward had been incorporated in what was to be tabled for council approval. So I think that's the biggest lesson, for us as officials, and I am hoping that for the stakeholders themselves, their appreciation of why government, why the city is embarking on programs like this has grown as a result. So there's a lot more positive energy, enthusiasm about getting the program moving now as opposed to the previous attempts that we've made.
So can we say that we are ready now?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manyathi, for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Ubaba Thami Manyathi, head of eThekwini Transport Authority. My name is Zimbili Mazibuko. From myself and the entire team, it's goodbye. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, to share.